Hello and welcome to the Policybazaar Show. Healthcare treatment is not simply restricted to hospitalization. It includes checkups, diagnostics, post-surgery consultations, and several other factors. OPD expenses may not seem like a big amount, but it does help to have adequate financial security in place. Post-pandemic and amidst rising medical inflation, it seems absolutely necessary and critical to have the secure cover of health insurance and at the same time invest in plans that come with OPD coverage, which is absolutely essential for senior citizens and people who are suffering from ailments which require them to visit the doctor often. This brings us to the topic of today's show, expanding the scope of protection and health insurance with OPD coverage. And to discuss this, joining me on the show, we have Shashank Chaphekar, Chief Distribution Officer of ManipalCigna Health Insurance Company Limited. Just a quick brief for all our viewers about Shashank. He plays a pivotal role in driving the company's enterprise strategy and is responsible for driving multi-channel distribution, online sales, renewal and retention, and sales strategy, including rewards and recognition. Shashank has deep work experience and industry knowledge in distribution channels like agency, bancassurance and alliances, corporate agency and broking, direct marketing, group business, online sales, and sales strategy. Pleasure having you here with us, Shashank.
Thanks a lot, Akshita, and really looking forward to a great discussion today.
Absolutely. Let me also introduce Amit Chhabra, Head of Health and Travel Insurance at Policybazaar.com. Amit brings in more than a decade of work experience across top-tier management consulting firms and high-growth startups in India and in the United States. His past portfolio includes consulting focused on strategy engagements in the telecom, media and technology space in India and US markets. His key areas of expertise include corporate and business unit strategy, growth strategy, product strategy, and innovation. Amit, you're a show veteran. Welcome again.
Thank you, Akshita. Thank you so much.
So let me begin with you, Amit. The past few years have seen a significant rise in various kinds of health risks and also in medical inflation, which makes health insurance essentially a non-negotiable purchase, right? What, according to you, are the most important features that a person should consider while buying health insurance?
Sure. See, I think the most important factor is adequacy of coverage, and I'll explain what that means. It means different things for different people. So for somebody, adequacy could be as simple as a simple 5 lakh plain vanilla cover, which just covers you for hospitalization. For somebody, adequacy could mean that I want a global coverage. I want coverage up to, let's say, 5 crore rupees, and I can go to Singapore or US to get treated for a critical illness. For somebody, it could mean that anything related to my health, be it going to a general physician, be it buying some medicines, be it getting a diagnostic test done, all of that gets covered. So I think it means different things for different people, but adequacy as per you and every person, every individual needs to define what that adequacy is. But making sure that your health insurance policy is adequate for your needs is, I think, the single biggest feature that one should look for. Now, in that, I think one thing that's been missing always is outpatient coverage. So in healthcare, what we've seen is 70% of every healthcare expense that's there is actually on outpatient, and that was never covered in any health insurance policy. And to be very honest, there wasn't ever a great product covering outpatient as well. I think that is what needs to change, and increasingly we are now seeing some great outpatient products coming out, and I believe that over the next year or so, this will now become a part of almost every health insurance policy, where outpatient becomes the feature that is a must-have in your health insurance policy.
I'll take off from your last point, Amit, and bring in Shashank as well. Shashank, recently the new Cigna Prime plan was launched with the tagline, "Health insurance mein aa gaya ab Prime." What exactly do we mean by Prime, and what benefits does it really entail?
So, Akshita, clearly, I think consumers are already familiar and have a certain expectation when it comes to the word Prime services, correct? Clearly, Prime signifies delta over the basic, better than usual. And today, if you go back and look at it, people are always looking for better benefits, correct? And the ManipalCigna Prime plan provides these customized feature to meet the customer requirement. It has 3 core themes, if I may say. One is clearly better control. It gives you better control over your healthcare through features like the Prime switch off. It gives you a premium waiver, correct, which is one of its kind, that if the proposer is detected with a critical illness or meets up an accidental death, his next year premium gets waived. It allows you to choose any room category, including suites. It gives you unlimited restoration even for the same ailment, correct? And this clearly completes the kind of cover which one would need. It offers better coverage as the second theme, if I may go back and look at it. And I think we are happy to introduce non-medical expenses being covered, which means virtually 100% of the claim amount being settled. Typically, one would see 8 to 12% of the claim being non-medical expenses and therefore not getting covered. We've introduced for the first time a cashless OPD up to 50,000 rupees per policy, and that's what I think we are discussing at length. We've introduced a guaranteed cumulative bonus of 25% that does not have any linkage with the claim, correct? In a way, with every passing year, the customer gets a 25% increase sum assured as a benefit of continuing. And not only that, he can actually increase his cover up to 200%. So if somebody has, for example, a 10 lakh cover, over a period of 8 years at 25%, the 10 lakh cover will become 30 lakh. And this is at no additional cost to him. He's virtually paying for the cost of the 10 lakh cover. We also introduced maternity. Maternity is not too new as a concept, but we've introduced within that even the IVF treatments. Air ambulance in our product is over and above the base sum assured. So these couple of benefits go back and offer you better coverage. In terms of better care, obviously, I think we've always at ManipalCigna said with the customer being together in illness and wellness. So we offer annual health checkups starting the first year. There is a wellness benefit of close to 20% of discount that the consumer can get by, and we just monitor simply his number of steps that he would walk, correct? So thematically, if I go back and look at it, basically the ProHealth Prime has three variants. You have the ProHealth Prime Protect, which provides the hospitalization cover. You have the ProHealth Prime Advantage, which covers the hospitalization plus the cashless OPD, which allows him therefore access to a doctor consult, the prescribed diagnostics, pharmacy, which typically, like Amit said, are not covered under any of the health insurance. And the third segment that we cater to is with the ManipalCigna ProHealth Prime Active, which is catering to people who have some pre-existing ailments like diabetes, obesity, asthma, hypertension, or cholesterol, correct? And these consumers now in the new products really don't need to wait for a long waiting period. They can be covered from as early as 90 days from getting onboarded.
You know, from some of the features that you have mentioned, Amit, you know, what hits me is that it kind of tells you about how in India, out-of-pocket medical expenses like doctor consultations, lab tests, medicines, they make up for about 70% of healthcare expenditure. So how is the health insurance market really evolving to cater to this 70%?
Sure. See, I think if you look back, let's say 6 months back, you know, there weren't any great outpatient coverage products.
Yeah.
So practically customers were on their own whenever it came to that 70%, as you said, right? But that's now changing, and what we're now seeing is that increasingly, you know, a lot of new products that are coming, they're now having outpatient as a part of the benefits. Now it could be as a benefit, you know, as a built-in part of the benefit of the product. It could also be an additional rider where, you know, a customer has to pay extra money and then they get the benefit. Now, importantly, what does it cover? So it covers, it covers for doctor consultations. And when I say doctor consultations, it could be digital consultations, it could be in-person consultations at a hospital as well. Then followed by that, it could include the cost of any medical checkups that are required. It would include the cost of any medicines that are prescribed by the doctor. If, of course, eventually it further leads to a hospitalization, then it's anyways covered as a part of the indemnity benefit that a health insurance policy offers. So what it's getting towards slowly is almost a 360-degree kind of a cover for the customer, where right from a very minor, let's say a minor cold and cough, to something as severe as cancer, everything is covered in the health insurance policy itself, be it inpatient, be it outpatient.
Essentially, it's 100% cover of every aspect really of the treatment. Shashank, usually health insurance policies cover a person when in India. How does the switch off benefit in the new Prime plan really help the customers when they're traveling abroad and something happens?
Yeah, so I think this is something very, very unique that we've launched. I think this might be the first in the industry. We introduced the benefit of the Prime switch off, which whenever a consumer is traveling abroad for a period of a maximum period of about 30 days, he can actually technically switch off his cover, because what happens is the cover actually provides you domestic cover, correct? And therefore, when you're traveling abroad, you're continuing to pay. So what is very unique is that the customer just informs us that he is traveling abroad. He switches off his insurance policy. Once he's back, he switches it on, and the customer gets the benefit of a prorated premium discount for the number of days that he has kept this switched off. So very, very unique and interesting from a consumer perspective.
True. Amit, it's common for people in India to not buy individual health insurance and instead depend entirely on their corporate policy cover. Data also suggests exactly that over 50 to 60% of the working population falls into this bracket. Are corporate policies sufficient to cater to all medical expenses? People definitely seem to think so.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest traps that's there, where a lot of our educated, salaried population is. And they typically end up thinking that today I have a corporate policy. Maybe I can buy one for myself when I retire. Let's say after 20, 30 years when I retire, that's when I'll buy my my retail individual health insurance policy. There are actually 3-4 very, very probable scenarios where this assumption or this logic fails. So one is when you have to look at, again, as I said, the adequacy of coverage. Typically, a corporate policy has 2 lakh, 3 lakh, maximum 5 lakh sum insured, which is definitely not enough in the current times. We saw this during COVID times where people ended up spending tens of lakhs of rupees on hospitalization. We see a lot of young, healthy people getting things like cancer, heart problems, none of which gets treated in a 5 lakh sum insured or a 3 lakh sum insured, right? So one definitely needs a larger sum insured as a starting point. So that's one. The second thing is, what happens if you move your job? You become an entrepreneur, you start something on your own. Or you move to an organization which does not give you even 5 lakh sum insured, which gives you 2 lakh sum insured. Then again, you're left stranded. So that's the second area where this logic fails. And the third area, and I think which is the most scary as well, is that if you contract some disease while you are depending on your corporate cover, let's say when you're 45 and you get a heart problem, then when you retire at, let's say, 50, 55, the problem is you may not even get an individual health insurance policy at that time because you already have a disease. So you may not even get coverage, and then you will be left completely stranded because you will leave your job, you won't have a corporate cover, and you can't get a retail cover from the side. But I think looking at these three large factors, I think it's extremely important to understand that a corporate health insurance policy which you get from your office is a very good backup. But your primary health cover should be your individual health insurance policy, for which you don't have to depend on anybody. You can buy it now, and you can keep it, for your lifetime, for your old age, and even for now in case something comes up.
Very, very important point. Shashank, there is an option available in health insurance where customers are essentially required to pay a small amount before they can make a claim. Could you, explain more about that feature, if it's a good option also for a corporate insurance customer?
Yeah, so the option to pay a small amount before you go back and make a claim, typically in the insurance parlance, is referred to as deductibles, correct? And there can be 2 approaches that one can go back and take. The first approach is that in the indemnity products, say ProHealth Prime that we are speaking about, the consumer has an option to go back and opt for a small deductible as low as 10,000 to 25,000. And what this does is the 10 to 25,000 deductible goes back and gives the customer a huge price benefit, discounts up to 20% on his premium, correct? And which in process, if you ask me, makes it very, very affordable for the customer to have sufficient cover. So the corporate cover one can can continue to have, correct? But like Amit said, I completely second him saying the primary cover has to be your personal indemnity product. And so as to avoid paying double for it, correct? You can maybe go back and opt for a deductible equivalent to your corporate cover, which will make it very, very affordable for you to have your personal cover. And at a point when you either, like Amit said, move the entrepreneur route or retire, you can just go back and reduce the deductible to even as much as a zero, correct? And therefore get the full continuity and benefit.
Yeah, very interesting. Clearly what the expert's saying here is that don't rely just on your corporate policy cover. Ensure you have a personal health insurance cover as well. On that note, it's time for me to slip into a very short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on the Policybazaar Show. Welcome back to the Policybazaar Show. We are discussing expanding the scope of protection in health insurance with OPD coverage with Shashank Chaphekar from ManipalCigna Health Insurance and Amit Chhabra of Policybazaar.com. Let's continue our discussion where we left off, Amit. People with pre-existing diseases or PEDs often don't know what will be the best option for them. And what, according to you, is the most important feature for a PED customer that he or she should really keep in mind?
I think the most important thing, Akshita, I had to look at is the waiting period that the policy that you're buying has. So I'll explain that through an example. Let's say if I'm a diabetic patient and I'm really scared that a claim might come in, let's say, in the next 6 months to 1 year because of my diabetes, then I would ideally want to buy a policy which gives me coverage for diabetes within the first year itself, rather than buying an option which gives me coverage for diabetes, say, after 3 years. So there is an option, the standard policies that I can buy where you have a waiting period of 3 years or 4 years, and diabetes does get covered after that. But at the same time, with a lot of innovation that is happening, there are now options to buy a plan which will give you coverage for diabetes actually from day one itself. So if you buy a policy today, your diabetes will also be covered from tomorrow, which I think is a huge leap towards making health insurance available universally to all kinds of customers rather. So I think that to me is the single most important point to look at. There are other points, like for example, you have to look at room rent capping, that there should be no room rent capping ideally. There should be no co-payment, which means that you don't have to pay anything from your own pocket and everything's paid by the insurance company. So there are these points as well, but I think the single most important point from somebody's perspective who already has a pre-existing disease is to look at that waiting period and say that I want to minimize my waiting period. You may have to pay a bit more, probably 2,000-3,000 rupees more, but at the same time, it gives you a significant more peace of mind because everything related to your existing disease is covered right away.
One question that's often asked, Shashank, is what are some of the exclusions that people should also be aware about?
First of all, understanding what is the kind of sum insured that is required, correct? And will it meet his present and the future healthcare needs? Second, and I think the most critical leg in an insurance contract is the fact that very, very critical for the consumer to disclose all pre-existing medical facts. Third, obviously, like Amit said, understand the waiting periods, TNCs. Fourth, understanding the coverages. In some of the don'ts that I would really put up is maybe at the cost of repetition, not to conceal any of your medical history. Because what happens is that typically information gets taken up as part of the application. And secondly, when you get admitted into the hospital for treatment, that's another point where your patient history gets picked up. And if these two don't tally, correct, it really defeats the purpose. Another behavior that I see, and I would urge people to be a little careful and conscious, is not to delay the renewals, correct, and pay the premiums before the due date, because technically within the grace period, while there is a grace period, the claims are not covered.
I'm sure our viewers found that extremely informative. One final question that I have for both of you, beginning with you, Amit. Broadly, OPD coverage is a relatively new addition to health insurance, and we'd like to know your view first on whether you see this as a starting point to a more evolved health insurance market in the country.
Absolutely. I think can't agree more to that. I think what's going to happen is over the next 6 months to 1 year, OPD is going to become a part of every health insurance purchase that a customer does. Because there is now more and more awareness. COVID has also somewhere, made everybody a lot more aware about what they want, what kind of coverage do they want, what kind of expenses possibly can there be around healthcare. So I think this is going to become a norm now, and everybody will want some sort of OPD coverage as a part of their health insurance policy. This could mean that somebody who's buying a new health insurance policy will prefer plans which have outpatient coverage. Somebody who's renewing their existing policy will want some sort of an OPD coverage as well. So I think it's going to become extremely mainstream as we go forward.
Shashank, would you agree that this would lead to a more evolved health insurance also in the market with regards to more schemes with OPD coverage?
The healthcare space, okay, I'm not speaking health insurance. The healthcare, according to me, has 4 legs. The first leg is obviously consulting a doctor, maybe diagnostic test advised by the doctor being done, medication that the doctor may recommend, and the fourth situation being that you needing to be hospitalized. Clearly, the first 3 sets, which is your consultation, diagnostic, and pharmacy, correct, historically have not been covered in most of the health insurance plan, correct? And they cater to this number that we've all been talking about of anywhere between 65 to 70% of the healthcare spends being out of pocket. So clearly there is a huge market which is untapped in terms of the consumer need. I think there is an evolution. So we've taken the first step in the ProHealth Prime to launch a cashless OPD benefit from 20,000 to 50,000 rupees that the consumer can go back and avail, which can cover all the first 3 things that I said, which is whether it is teleconsult, physical consult, diagnostics, or medicines, correct? And this is coming through an ecosystem which the consumer can access through a simple app. He can set up either his physical or teleconsult or his diagnostic, or even just upload the prescription and get the medicines back home. And therefore, this ecosystem, if you ask me, is something that, according to me, will progress further and really develop, correct? Because according a larger number of partnerships will come on board, creating a far deeper network in terms of reach, given the vast expanse of India. And there'll be service providers who will be catering maybe through a digital ecosystem of ensuring that end-to-end consumer experience is absolutely digital and seamless.
It's great news for the Indian consumer, for the customer, that OPD services are also being brought in, being roped in as well. With that, we come to the end of this extremely informative and insightful discussion. I'd like to thank both Amit and Shashank for taking the time out and joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure having both of you on the show with us. That's all for this week. Keep watching the Policybazaar Show.